Thank you so much.
This is fun. We didn't do any preparation.
Yeah. What's gonna happen?
Welcome, everybody. If you guys want to grab your seats or whatever's comfortable for you.
Your people told my people that you wanted to read the
Oh.
That's what I have in my intro.
No, I'm really happy
Here,
now.
come sit, come sit, come sit.
I'm happy not to read.
Come on. Come on.
Come closer.
Well, hello.
Hello.
Hi,
Everyone.
guys.
Hello, welcome. My name is Serena. I'm a manager at Books Are Magic, and I just want to start by thanking you all so much for braving the cold and joining us here, and including those turning in virtually as we celebrate the release of Antoine Wilson's Mouth to Mouth, which we will be reading from and discussing tonight alongside our very own Emma Straub. And I have the pleasure of introducing them this evening. But before we begin, I have a few housekeeping notes. Firstly, in consideration of everyone's safety, we ask that you please keep your mask on for the full duration of this event, including in the signing line. The signing line will take place at the desk near the door where you entered. You should have received your copy of Mouth to Mouth upon entry, but if you would like to purchase additional copies to be signed, there will be some available there as well. To those tuning in from our YouTube live stream, hello. You can purchase your copy of the book as well as Emma's books via the link in the description, or simply type booksareMagic.net/mouth to mouth and it will take you to the right place. Lastly, there will be some time for your questions later on, and we'll be conducting a hand-raised Q&A, so make sure to prepare your questions for that time. Now, on to the event. So, a bit about the book for context. In Mouth to Mouth, our narrator bumps into a former UCLA classmate named Jeff Cook while at JFK Airport. Jeff, a successful art dealer, then invites him to the first-class lounge where he begins to share the uncanny and until then unrevealed story of the time Jeff rescued and resuscitated a drowning man on the beach of Santa Monica. The story soon gives way to confession as Jeff describes the increasingly eerie ways that his life and the life of the man he saved become entangled. What results is a deft and propulsive story about deception, delusion, fate, and opportunity. In addition to authoring Mouth to Mouth, Antoine Wilson is the author of the novels Panorama City and The Interloper. His work has appeared in the Paris Review, Story Quarterly, Best New American Voices, and the Los Angeles Times, among other publications. And he is a contributing editor of A Public Space. A graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop and recipient of a Hoke Smith Fiction Fellowship from the University of Wisconsin, he lives in Los Angeles. As mentioned, joining Antoine in conversation this evening is Emma Straub, who is the New York Times bestselling author of 4 other novels, All Adults Here, The Vacationers, Modern Lovers, Laura Lamont's Life in Pictures, and the short story collection Other People We Married. Her books have been published in 20 countries. She and her husband own Books Are Magic, this very bookstore. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Antoine and Emma. Thank you, Serena. Hi, Antoine.
Hi. 20
we-
countries. That's amazing. I kind of want to just do the rundown of the list of the countries, but we're not doing that tonight, are
No,
we? Okay.
not about me.
the camera
they're saying
fell.
we need to fix the
Oh,
camera.
you know what it
Thank
is?
you.
It's my pants.
I mean, the pants are
my pants
attractive.
attracted the camera.
The
But
pants are
I didn't wear
attractive.
my nice shoes because I was going to...
I wore my
Oh, you were
my
very
slogs.
comfortable. I
Anyway.
brought nice shoes. I'm not wearing them. Too much walking in this city.
I know.
And
Sorry.
I had to put really thick socks on. So.
Yeah, I do feel like I hate when people from warm places come to New York City and it's like this, because I feel like it's like proving that you made good life decisions and we didn't.
Yeah. I'll be
Anyway.
out on my lawn tomorrow
Braggart.
as the snow falls.
Okay, Antoine, I loved your book so much. I loved it so much. It's so satisfying.
Oh.
It's like which is not always true. I think one can love a book and have it not feel really satisfying. But I loved it, and I'm so happy to have you actually here in person to talk about it. So I want to start by, so as Serena mentioned, you know, the book unfolds as sort of this very long conversation in a lounge.
Do you think that part of the reason people are loving it so much is because we are all deprived of those kind of weird in-person conversations right now?
I don't know. I mean, I think the sort of the fantasy of the first class lounge and maybe the world of travel has been, kept away from us for a while. I find that, like, my idea of a good time would be a book that was almost like entirely dialogue between two people. But this book mercifully cuts away to like this sort of close third-person narration of Jeff's story.
Yeah.
So like, I think that keeps it from being too claustrophobic. I don't think anybody wants a claustrophobic novel right now.
No. This book is not claustrophobic at all. And it's suspenseful and delicious. And I want to talk about how it came to you, because I in an interview I read, you said that you'd sort of unearthed either notes for a story or a story that you wrote a decade ago.
Yeah.
So you've been circling this for a
Oh
while.
my God. Yeah. I mean, like, I just want to say, yes, it came to me in a flash, and I wrote it in 2 weeks. But yeah. So I mean, I did find that the first page of the book has this sort of scene where the unnamed narrator, who's a writer, is sitting at the gate before he hears Jeff Cook's name being called, and he's thinking about this image that he saw on the plane taking off from LA. He saw fireworks from above, and so he's just ruminating on that briefly on the first page, and then he hears Jeff Cook's name. So I was digging around almost post-publication, and in my computer in the archives, and I saw airportstory.txt, and I was like, what, an airport story? So I opened it up, and there is the fireworks from above, and the name being called, and this character saying, God, is this the person who has that name from way back when? And this file was dated January 2001.
Wow.
So that first page of the book is something that I've been dying to get out for 20 years.
You really held on to those fireworks.
I did. It feels like something that maybe was like in my intestine, like trapped on the side, and then suddenly was able to be released with everything else. But I've always been interested in this sort of like rescued relationship, and whether that's somebody helping somebody out of a situation, the white knight type thing, and how complicated that can get, especially how it can diminish the person being rescued, all that stuff. But I also was an EMT, so more literally I've dealt with that kind of thing. Maybe the germ of the sort of chunk of the novel, the thing that got me going, was from back in '97, not written then, but I stopped a guy from walking in front of a train. I was in Seattle with my friends. We were just visiting by the waterfront, and there was this guy just air drumming along with his headphones on, not looking at anything, and there's a freaking freight train just coming, and like, oh my God, like it's one of those moments where you're in, you're in the intersection, and the light turns green, but the old lady's still crossing. You're just like, please. But I got the guy's attention. He looks over at me, and then he stops, and then the train goes by. He's just like, oh my God, you saved my life. And then he said, I'm going to buy you a big steak dinner. And then the train goes by and finishes going by, and he just keeps air drumming. It's gone. He's gone forever. And I never got my steak dinner. So my friends made fun of me, whatever. About 10 years ago, I was noodling around with a rescue story, and it started with a drowning. It was in a pool, but it was the steak dinner thing. And I was like very literal about my approach, because I guess that's the way I was working. But so yeah, took the guy got the steak dinner in the story, because that's a fantasy of mine. And then he was like, wow, that was a great steak dinner. Let's do this again next week, right? Because like, how many steak dinners does it take to pay somebody back for saving your life? Which is,
how many?
I don't know. Well, we'll never know, because it doesn't really work as a story.
Yeah.
but it gave birth to this.
Yeah, well, and it did, like, as a person who like obsessively writes thank you notes. In fact, there's a friend of mine is here who wrote a whole book about writing thank you notes. it did, like, that part of it really resonated with me, where he's like, wait, no, hey, come on, I did that.
Yeah, right. And so in the book, after Jeff saves this guy from drowning, he resuscitates him on the beach, and then the lifeguard shows up, and then the ambulance shows up, and they take the guy away, and all the crowd dissipates and everything, and Jeff is left on the beach. He's sort of just post-college, so this is, and he's just already heartbroken, which is why he was there in the first place. He's got the wool blanket around him, and he's alone. And he sees the lifeguard truck, seems like it's going to come back to him, and then it just heads towards headquarters. And so he's left with this empty feeling. He's had what essentially is, for him, a traumatic event, because even though he's done this heroic thing, he feels like he didn't really have a choice but to go and dive into the water, and it's unpleasant to give someone CPR, to say the least. And then he has to figure out what to do with that trauma, with that sort of sense of his own agency, and yeah.
And that's really where the story begins. And I don't know. I know you want to read. Do you want? Because I think no. Do you want to read or no? Up to you.
If I have the option, I'd probably rather not read.
Okay, so you know what? It's a short book. You can read it all yourself.
Right.
All right.
That's right.
You can get a copy right now, and then you read it yourself. Okay, so I want to talk about. So Jeff is telling most of the story, right?
Yes.
We hear most of the story from Jeff's point of view, but it's our narrator. It's all being told to our narrator, and his presence is an important part of the story. How did you decide? So you've got fireworks airplane dot dock or whatever.
Right, airports. Test.
Sorry.
Right.
Sorry, Antoine. Okay, so you've got your file.
Right.
And how did you get from that file to the decision about the point of view in the story? Because I feel like that's what makes it really exciting.
Yeah. Well, so 10 years ago, noodling with the story, I eventually came to the idea of this guy saving somebody who was maybe toxic or semi-malignant narcissist, like not a great guy. And then that's kind of one of those things, like you discover the person you saved is not a great guy. It seems fertile for exploration. Then I did several versions of trying to figure out where that would lead. And my process is essentially to try to write my way there, just whatever, discover what it is to discover, and then eventually, the ship hits the rocks, and then I tend to start over with no cutting and pasting. That's my one rule, because I figure whatever sticks up here, I can deploy it and make it it just has that sense of spontaneity on the page, right? But the uploading process is long and difficult. But I had this Jeff story, the essence of it, for quite a while, and there's a parasitic twin to this novel, which was another novel that I was writing and serially abandoning and going back and forth and driving my wife insane. Not the kind of oh, I'm going to work on this today or whatever, but more like this. Can I swear on your thing? This.
I think the only person who I know is watching this is my mom, and I say yes.
Oh, she's okay with it. She's okay with it. It's literally, I'm like, this fucking doesn't work. Why did I fucking do this? I wasted all this time. I'm going to go work on the other thing. And this is done. And my wife would be like, okay, check in 6 months. And then it would be literally the exact same thing going back and forth between these two projects. And it was while working on the other one, after having abandoned this one, because I just couldn't, there was something about Jeff's language, him telling the story in first person to the reader, that just wasn't sitting right with me, and I couldn't quite unlock it. It's sort of murky, intuitive stuff, but it wasn't working. I was working on the other one, and I reread Austerlitz by W.G. Sebald, which is an amazing book. I read it in 2001, and this was about 2017, so I was rereading it. And this book has nothing to do with that book. But I was like, that's that sort of anonymous narrator in between the reader and the story is interesting. And I decided to see what would happen with that. And when I abandoned that thing again and returned to this, I was like, let's see if I can make it work with that. And it just felt right.
Yeah.
So neat things happened and that I can sort of post, I can justify, but really just felt right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it offers. I mean, that distance is really tense, and I think one of the things that I love so much about this book is that it feels really suspenseful, because you don't know what's going to happen, and you sort of sometimes you forget that, or at least I sometimes forgot that. Oh right, we're being told this story. Like it's not, it's not always front of mind, and because you get so wrapped up in Jeff and Francis, the guy he saved, and it's there's a whole plot. There's a whole plot happening there.
Right.
There's a whole story happening there before you realize again. Oh wait a minute.
Right,
What's
right.
going to happen?
And then suddenly you're like back in the bedroom with Peter Falk and what's his name, Fred
Savage.
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 Thank you.
There you go. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Would have been all night just searching for that. Fred Savage. Yeah, but I mean, because there are moments where the story, intentionally, that sort of airport part of the story, like cut in, just interrupt the narrative. One of the neat things that happened because of that kind of switching back and forth is the airport sections happen in like kind of almost real time. And that appeals to me very much. Like the book starts with, I sat at the gate. I love it. It's like static. Nothing's happening. Then there's a gratuitous image. It has nothing to do with anything. It's just about these fireworks. What the hell? This is what I want to write for 200 pages, but apparently I'm not allowed. And so then I get into stuff. But I just love this sort of sense of this real time, this capsule, this space. And then when it switches into the narrative of Jeff's story, which is essentially the arc of maybe like the center of what the book is, and how Jeff is constructing the story of his life, and whether he's fixing it up, painting it in a pretty way, modifying it. We don't, there's a lot of room for the reader to experience Jeff's story in the way that they are oriented, but that stuff moves with like plot, and propulsion.
Yeah.
And then we're back in the chamber, right, with the two of them sort of facing off, homoerotically, according to one reader. And then, but what it allows me to do as a writer is to take a big leap to the next fun scene.
Yeah.
So I was able to sort of cut from meat to meat.
Yeah.
With the story,
Yeah.
the third person stuff.
Yeah,
So it has this like slow, fast thing.
Yeah, well, and it seemed like it was, like, it's such a fun book to read because of that, because I could feel you having fun. Like, I could feel like, oh, look at him.
That's an illusion.
Look at what he's doing.
It's true. I mean, if I have any strength as a writer, it's to like clean up my mess afterward, like all the anguish that goes into making something fun for you to read. I wanted to feel as if, it just came out of my fingers right there, and it was really fun.
I appreciate your anguish, Antoine. So this book has been described as a suspense novel, as a mystery. Like it's on. I feel like it's probably appeared on some like lists and in some places that you hadn't anticipated. Why? Like, how do you feel about that? Like that people are reading it as sort of as belonging to something, or did like was that part of your intention?
Or it's not.
Yeah. So tell me.
Part of it. I guess the first stuff that came in was like it's Highsmithian, or this is Ripley. And I was like, okay, I guess maybe I should read it, but I'd never read Ripley, and I never saw the movie, so I was like really like trying to figure out. I did see Purple Noon, which is like an older adaptation, it might be in French, and I don't remember. Anyway, so
not a big influence.
No, right. So I'd waded into this territory that I just had no real sense of what the markers are, the typical standard markers. And so I think a number of readers felt they had the experience of it being thrilling or suspenseful, and that does have its reveals, you know, and it's sort of tight. It has a little mic drop at the end, a little, that maybe recasts the entire novel into a different light.
Okay, that's Antoine saying the ending is really good, and it's true.
Well, I don't know. I can't read the book as a reader, but I'll take your word for it. Thank you. In any case, so yeah, it ends up being making people have those feelings, and then they're like, okay, well, perhaps it could go into that category, which I think for reviewers, maybe publishing professionals, it's like this category sells a ton more books than the category where you're like just sitting and thinking about what fireworks look like from above. So, in that sense, I like being able to reach a broader set of readers.
Yeah.
The sort of pitfall is if those readers come expecting the sort of hallmarks of a genre that I have no experience in.
Yeah.
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 But
I think that it's, I was teasing you just 3 moments ago about the ending, but it really is. I think that is where mysteries or suspense novels, books like that really are made or not. Like it's
in the ending, delivering.
In the ending, yeah.
Right.
I mean, in the same way that like I guess it's not the same as like a romance and like a happy ever after kind of thing. Like certainly not every suspenseful novel is sort of tied up with a bow, and yours certainly is not either. But I think that there is a sense of satisfaction that you give that those readers will find. Like I don't know if you're like checking your Goodreads things for like mystery readers.
Try to avoid the Goodreads.
No, I mean, why would you?
I've been told.
Go there. Don't go to that neighborhood.
I've been told it's crystal meth.
Oh.
In that, I think you could go there repeatedly and gain maybe a little bit of a high and great satisfaction, but in the long run, your teeth are going to fall out.
Yeah.
You're not going to want to look at yourself in the mirror.
Yeah,
right.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. I just want to see. Okay, if anyone has questions, not yet. Get ready. I'm glad you're ready. Very excited.
I know.
Front row. People. She didn't want to sit in the front row. Then she's dead. Then she's got her hand. Okay, so here's one more question, maybe 2 more questions, then I'll open it up. Okay. This maybe sounds horrible coming from a person who owns a bookstore, but I've recently read a lot of very long books.
Oh yeah.
And I almost always, not always, but I almost always wish that they were 200 pages shorter.
Huh.
And I don't know if that's just my personal prejudices as a reader or the fact that I have small children or whatever. But I loved the size of this book. And I wonder if you can talk about its size, like about it feeling compact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you on the long books. In fact, like I read right before the pandemic, I read War and Peace, and in fact it was 200 pages shorter the way that I read it. I just didn't read the last 200 pages. And I just read for masochistic reasons, but also reading pleasure reasons, I read Gravity's Rainbow. And you could cut 200 pages out of Gravity's Rainbow, but it would have to be like one word per line.
Sure.
Like you can't just lop it off. So, but yeah, in terms of this, as sort of implied, the process of writing this book was sort of long and went through many different stages. So there are lines, like literal just lines in the book that represent 10,000 words that are on some, in some other file or some other version of the book. There's a whole like second half of a different novel that isn't what this is, So as part of that process, I think I just kept compressing and just not wanting to have any fat. And I love short novels like Invention of Morel. I love that book. I love like those sort of short, really tight books. And then I also like really, really long books. The ones that sort of, make you put everything else aside.
Yeah.
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 But it is, it's that, I like the word compression, like thinking
Yeah.
about the word
Well,
compression.
And the other thing I keep hearing, and this is, I mean, it's uncanny how often this response comes, and it's from all different people in 2 different continents. People gulp the book down, or they devour
Yeah.
the book, which is a really interesting metaphor for reading this book. I think they mean to say that they take it in fairly quickly and in like one sitting, and they just can't sort of
Yeah.
get up. But other people have called it a stick of dynamite, which I find useful because then I can imagine the devourers have devoured a stick of dynamite.
Do you resent the devourers, the gulpers, because you're like, no, do you understand that this took me so long and I had to compress and take out 10,000 words here and 10,000 words there, how dare you?
Well,
Read it
yeah,
fast.
people can read it however they want to read it, obviously. But like, have you ever had the experience where somebody's like, "Oh, I loved your book. I read it on the plane."
Yeah.
Right,
Yes.
and you're just like, "Wait, you had that whole experience just on one flight?" It's it's like I bought as a gift. There's this company I think is in Portland called Ranger Chocolate, and they make unbelievable small batch chocolate, right? And I have sent it as a gift to people, and I always have to like annoyingly email them to tell them how to enjoy the chocolate, right? Because if you just eat it, it's a waste. You have to take a little bite of it and let it sit in your mouth, and it's that kind of thing. So yeah, I kind of feel like let it sit in your mouth. Don't just gulp it down.
Okay, so like
I don't resent it. I think it's exciting. It's a compliment. It means that they really were gripped.
No, but
Yeah.
I mean, trust me, I hear you. As someone who's on who is like put it in your beach bag. Like
Right.
I hear you.
Yeah. The one
Like,
thing.
it doesn't matter if you get sand on it and drop it in the pool. Like
Right.
I
The
hear
one thing
you.
I do resent is if you listen to the audiobook at like 1.7.
Oh.
That I can't tolerate. That is not okay.
Okay, wait, what's on the next page here?
Oh, I wanted to talk about art too. Oh my god,
Oh, yeah.
we have so much time. Okay, can I talk about art? Okay, so Francis,
Yes.
the person who gets saved, is an art dealer, and I mean I don't want to give too much of the book away, but the his place ends up. He ends up being a big part of the story, and I thought it was really interesting that just the idea of art in this book. I would love to hear you talk about sort of why that worked so well, and like why that was what Francis did, and
Yeah. Well, as I said, I had come up with the idea of Jeff rescuing someone somewhat toxic, a malignant narcissist, and he was a businessman initially, and then I was trying to figure out, like, is he a corporate raider? Is he fire people? And none of these things were really interesting to me, mainly because they would involve doing research. But then I thought, what about an art dealer? Can I really do this? This is something I've always wanted to write about. Can I just make him an art dealer and see what happens? And that's essentially what happened. The Jeff's story has some parallels in my own life. In the post UCLA period, I knew I wanted to be a novelist. I had been pre-med and had taken the MCAT and stuff, but I had like come out as I'm going to be a novelist. And I'd taken no creative writing, so I was just like knew nothing. And so I went to the job board, and there was a job that said books, and so I was like, I'm going to apply for that. And it was like fine art and rare book appraisal. And the books were like 5% of the work. The rest of it was all fine art appraisal in Beverly Hills,
Wow.
which is a whole other universe. And I knew nothing about fine art, and I basically learned on the job about post-war and contemporary fine art, appreciating work through auction catalogs. So everything had a price tag on it,
Yeah.
So this weird art commerce thing, and so I could go like walk through Museum of Modern Art or whatever and look at these amazing paintings and just you enjoy like the good ones or like whatever you're vibing with, right? You're like, oh, Joan Mitchell, who's one of her paintings is in the book, is one of those artists. So, but I would also walk through and just be like, 5, 4 million, you know, like, I mean, it's a very sort of weird dual track thing.
Yeah.
And then those numbers, trying to apply those numbers to your real life that you're living. I went to an art fair a few years ago, and I saw artwork by an artist, Tatsuo Miyajima, whose like work blown me away at the Met Breuer. And I was like, oh my God, there he is. There's his work. You can buy a small one
Yeah.
for $55,000. That's a fucking deal. And then, you know, then I stop and I'm like,
Yeah.
that is a car, like a really
Yeah.
nice car that I can't, you know, I can't afford that.
Yeah.
But then also that's what it's worth. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of art and commerce in the book, but I think Jeff always sort of hews back to the commercial, as does Francis. But there is also real appreciation of the art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I love hearing you talk about it because it's such a funny world where like you could have made him a painter, right? But it's
Right.
you know you could have had art in some other way, but it's art with a price tag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's from my experience.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it came to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't like doing research.
No, who would do that?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm ready for you.
Oh yeah, what's your question?
I have two questions.
Okay.
Oh boy.
The first one is, so the novel completely works without the last line, but the last line makes the novel and on a whole other level. At what point did you know?
At the very end. I mean, I literally, that last chapter, which is tacked on in a sense. I mean, it's not tacked on, but there could be, without that last chapter, the novel does end. I mean, there are enough things that land. The balls that are thrown up all land. And then it's like, oh, one more thing. That came at the very, very end of the process, and in fact, it was one of those things where I just wrote it, and then I was staring at it on my screen, just like, can I do this? Like, can I just do this? Like, just literally have it come down to the last, can I just like mic drop this thing? And the answer is yes, but it did require, after having done that, going back and making sure that, you know, seeds were planted to make it not seem just like a trick, you know, or something like that. Yeah. Again, covering my own tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Question
second
number
part,
2.
yeah.
Question 2.
That other novel,
Yeah.
whatever happened to it?
I sent it to my agent, and no, well, it's got a laugh from the back on that. Yeah. Well, the problem with the other novel is it needs a plot, and there are certain things in the process of writing. It's like the most intuitive thing I've ever written. It's almost like as if I wrote memoir of my own life, but I was like a beginning memoir student who couldn't revise. But it's fiction. So this thing is like this whole blob that can't be cut, divided, and chopped. Like normally I'm like in there with slice and dice with fiction, no problem. And this thing I just couldn't quite maneuver. And so then I was like, okay, well, there's some dark things in the past here. Let's just have it, you know, culminate in this kind of this buried trauma come to the surface, which is like, you know, Perul Segal would be like, yep, you got sucked in by the vortex of the trauma plot, which is what happened. And so, and then it just doesn't quite all fit together. So I'll be returning to the nation that it's set in, but not likely to the exact book.
Okay, but wait, you just said that you have no problem zipping in and out with fiction.
Yeah.
And you made a sort of chopping motion.
Oh, yeah.
But then earlier you said
Oh.
no cut and paste.
Oh.
So let's talk about this.
Those were both knives.
Okay.
No-
so it's
no
just
paste.
cutting. It's just cutting. I see. Okay.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
cutting, rewriting,
Right.
but not
Okay.
like,
Got it.
yeah.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah. No, it's good. You can call me on that stuff if that happens.
Yes, Kate.
Hi. I was admittedly one of the devourers, but with that being said, I found myself going back and rereading because, like Emma said, this was one of the most satisfying novels I've read in many recent years.
Thank you.
So it was fantastic. But I want to ask both of you, what is inspiring you right now? What are you both reading? What are you recommending?
That's the
You go first.
right, yeah. I think I'm still on. I'm kind of on the tail end, but it's still sticking to me on a Javier Marias kick. So I've been reading his novels, and I'm just enamored of his work. And there were in this book, there may be a trace of one Javier Marias line or style thing, but I kind of like tried to get all of it out. But there's another author who I won't mention, who I read his first novel some years ago, and then his new one just came out, and I started reading, and I was like, there's Javier Marias in here somewhere, right? Like, this is happening right now. And so then I like put the book down, and I went on, and I read interviews with him, about, the book's coming out. Sure enough, that's not. I've been reading a lot of Javier Marias. So he's a tremendous Spanish writer, amazing. I highly recommend him. So that he's inspiring to me.
Oh God, I don't know. I mean, inspiring. Like I don't know. It's hard. Kate is also a bookseller, so this is like an inside baseball question. But I mean,
Very recent though.
yeah, but if you mean like inspiring in terms of writing, I don't know. I haven't written anything in a while. Like I feel like I'm out of that. Like I'm almost at the point where I have to like kick the tires and be like, does this still work? And like figure out something else to work on. But I guess I will say for my book that's coming out in May, like it was the first time that I was actually really aware of what books I was reading that I was like, not that I wanted to emulate in terms of the story or the style or anything, but just like in terms of the feeling that they gave you, like Paula Fox's Desperate Characters. I was like walking around the city at night, like that feeling, which is all over that book. And I don't know, like I was like that. I feel like that feeling is deep inside me, and I didn't think that I'd ever really written about it before. So like that kind of thing.
And on the other end, I was so emotionally moved by your books.
See, she's a plant.
Yeah.
She's a plant.
Yeah. Do you find that, are there things that inspire you that have no relation to your work in the sense that like that they might, but there's just no way that they do?
I mean, there are books that I read all the time. Yeah, I mean, like that. I mean, this whole place really is like just like the fact that all these books exist inspires me. Like the fact that there's always something new, some voice that I haven't read before, a story I haven't read before. Like that is thrilling. Like I get really excited about debut authors. Like. I don't know. There's so much. Yeah, there's so much where I'm like, oh, look at that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think also something I've been inspired by lately, and this is kind of like a wool gathering thing, because it's like, I'm not a particularly intuitive person, I think, but I have to like sort of let myself go, okay, well, I'm drawn to these things for some reason, and then at some point you have to be like, is this going to happen or not? But I've been drawn to and rereading The Tempest, and then the Peter Greenaway movie Prospero's Books, which is phenomenal, and that's like one of those things that's really inspiring me, and in no way should be influencing my way. People like just pull me away from the edge of the cliff there because I'm just like, oh my God, Michael Clark's choreography. I don't need to buy a theater and maybe like I want to do a theater without words. That's like where I am most of the time, and so like literally, I'm gonna just stop and buy a theater, and it's not gonna have any words in it.
Yeah.
Because too many words.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like that stuff really inspires me, and then I just have to like chill out. People talk me back to this. Back to reading pleasure.
Back to mouth
Writing.
to mouth.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? You can be brave. It's just us. Yes, hello.
Well, I was wondering when I was reading if you'd ever saved anyone's life, if you have. But then I was wondering whether you're a writer and the unnamed narrator is a writer.
Mm.
And I was wondering if anyone has ever told you a story where you thought, this person wants me to write a book.
Oh my God, it happens all the time. I mean, right? Does it happen to you in the doctor's office all the time, where every single person you meet is like, I've got a novel in me?
I don't know, maybe it's my face or something, but nobody tells me.
Oh.
Well, my dad used to pitch things, crazy things to me. But maybe I just shut him down because I'm like, I mean, if I could write other people's really interesting stories, I would, but it's really not sort of my mode. So it doesn't spark things in me, I think, so it doesn't happen that much.
I have one friend who told me her whole, like a friend I made as a 40-year-old, who told me about her family, and I was like, oh my God, I would do it. I would do this whole. I would take it. I would take the whole thing.
Yeah.
But it involved research, and it seemed too hard.
What is it called? Last Resort? Andrew Lipstein's got a book coming out that's based on this kind of idea.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
lifting somebody else's story.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
That's fun. It's fun to read about.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
So this may be an annoying writing workshop question.
I love those questions.
So as you're writing this or after the fact, did people ask you whose story is this? Did you think about that a lot? Did you worry about that? Being that the narrator's telling.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think the narrator there's so little of him in terms of what he sort of presents about himself. He's, in a lot of ways just sort of a functionary, maybe a little rounder than a functionary. But so it feels pretty clear that Jeff's arc is at the core of the themes of the book. But then how Jeff tells his story is the other sort of thematic layer, besides the way he rises up in the world through, either some sort of calculation or clueless of his own privilege or whatever you think. I think that the narrator is there to maybe cast doubt on it at times and question it and declare that he's not going to write this book at one point. Yes?
There's actually a few moments in the book where you take the time to say that the narrator is having a non-alcoholic drink.
Yeah.
And I wonder, is that something about truth? You're trying to set him up as this reliable narrator in a way.
Right. He's more clear-headed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was very, very interesting and it stuck with me. So.
Well, see, this is why I love readers, because the fact of the matter is I don't drink, and I thought, well, maybe he doesn't drink either. But I'm not the narrator. He cannot sleep on planes, and I can. I put that in there so nobody would accuse me of being the narrator. This is not a stand-in. It's a totally different person. It's a very different thing. He can't.
His name is Manton Milson.
Antoine Wiltron. Yeah.
All right, I think we have time.
That's a very interesting question. Yeah, it's good. Yes, it's coming out next year for children. It's called Mouse to Mouse. Sorry if you couldn't hear the question out there. It's tempting.
I think you should do it.
Yeah, I just might.
Maybe one more. Last question. Anybody?
All questions have been answered.
All the questions have been answered. Antoine.
Emma.
I love it. Everyone read this book. If you're watching, not inside this bookstore, this is the book that you need to get.
And you need to call the bookstore and order it. And if you don't live here, they can mail it to you.
Yeah.
And that way you support this amazing space and sort of center for the community instead of sending Space Devil up to low Earth orbit in his penis ship.
Down with the penis ship.
Yeah.
You heard it here first. Thank you, Antoine. Now we're gonna park Antoine in the back, and he's gonna sign your book, and you can ask him lots of questions. And thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you guys. Thank you for hosting. So appreciate it. And thank you for tuning in also. Sorry I can't see you, but hope you had fun.
Thanks for coming, Mom.
Wow, that was the best first reading post-pandemic.
Oh,
Because there was no reading, too. That makes it even better.
Okay, event.
Oh, so satisfying.
Oh my God.